Hello and welcome along to episode 5 of Across the Channel as we look back at another eventful weekend of Ligue 1 action and look ahead to the opening Champions League fixtures for the French trio. PSG, Marseille and Monaco all warmed up for their European ventures by securing domestic wins. They saw off Lens, Lorient and Auxerre respectively. There were dramatic come-from-behind victories for Lille against Toulouse and Rennes against Lyon. Controversy in Strasbourg where fans protested against their own captain, and slender but important victories for Nice and Paris FC. Joining me on the pod today, making his second appearance of the season, I am delighted to welcome back the writer, author and French television pundit, Tom Williams. How are you doing, Tom?
Hello, Matt. Very well, thank you. Very happy to be back.
Good stuff. How was your weekend? Were you in at Canal Plus?
Yes, I did Canal Plus on Saturday. Did quite a long match of the day alongside my esteemed colleagues Isaac Macaulay and Olivier Dacour, former Strasbourg and Lens legend that he is. Quite a long one on Saturday because there was an 8 o'clock kickoff in the Prem, so therefore a 9 o'clock kickoff in France between Brentford and Chelsea. But that was all good fun. I then met our other guest for a coffee on Sunday morning, and then I got the Eurostar back to London and did the Totally Football Show podcast yesterday afternoon. So yeah, it's been a fun football-packed weekend.
Not bad. And the suspense as to who is the other guest.
Drum roll, please.
Is it Samir Nasri, one of your other colleagues at Canal Plus? Maybe Zinedine Zidane? No, we couldn't get them, but we have got the Ligue 1 commentator Andy Scott. Andy, good to have you. How was your weekend?
Hi, Matt. It was pretty good. A couple of Ligue 1 games and also covering the FIFA Intercontinental Cup, which is already underway, which I'm sure all our listeners are all over. So I've been all over the place, including as Tom said, having a lovely coffee with him near the Gare du Nord in Paris yesterday morning.
Good stuff. You can't get enough of the football, can you, Andy?
No, I can get enough of the football, Matt, and I think this weekend has possibly pushed me to the limit.
Well, it's very good of you to give us a few more minutes of football talk. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you've got any questions, you can email us on acrossthechannelpodcast@gmail.com. Give us a rating on your podcast platform. Tell your friends about the pod. We do want to try to develop and grow this French football community on here, and we need your help to do that. Now, lads, it's Real Madrid against Marseille on Tuesday. Does either of you remember the last time these two sides met? I'm throwing this one at you out of the blue.
I think I can't specifically remember, but I think it was around about the same time when Mathieu Valbuena scored that incredible goal at Anfield. It was in the same era, wasn't it, that they played each other? Maybe 2009, something like that?
Well,
yes.
You have... Yeah.
Isn't there's a clip that occasionally does the rounds on social media of Mamadou Niang pulling off a ridiculous back heel turn and then crossing the ball in? I think it was against Real Madrid at the Velodrome in that same season. Not 100% sure though.
Okay, well, you've both done pretty well. It was 2009-10. I think Valbuena against Liverpool, was it before then? It might have been that season.
Yeah, I think that was 2007-8.
Yeah.
Similar era.
So, quiz question, guys. This is not for you, although I will give you a chance to answer it at the end of the pod. So, when Marseille played last at the Bernabeu, it was in 2009. They had a Spanish striker starting for them. Real Madrid had a French striker. Who were they? And what was the final score? And you will get a bonus if you get the goal scorers. So something to think about, and nobody is allowed to go on to Google. We're going to start, though, talking Ligue 1 now. Tom is already trying to rack his brains.
It's completely thrown me.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Mamadou Niang. He was playing and starting, but he wasn't the Spanish striker because he's Senegalese. But there was another striker. It was a really exciting weekend in Ligue 1. I know I kind of say that every week, but it has been a really good start to this season. So many storylines, so much going on. So we're going to start by asking for heroes and villains from the weekend. And I'll start with you, Tom. Your hero, please.
So my hero is one of the many very exciting teenagers in Ligue 1, and it's Kader Mete, 17-year-old Rennes striker, who came off the bench with Lyon leading 1-0 at Roison Park last night, and basically turned the game around single-handedly, gets Tyler Morton sent off, and we'll come on to him in a little bit, and then is heavily involved in the equaliser, basically scores the second goal, although it went down as an own goal by the Lyon goalkeeper, Rémi Descamps, and then does score the third goal with a towering header. And yeah, in the space of basically 15 minutes, just turns the game around, gives Rennes the victory. And this at a time when Rennes have signed a couple of new centre forwards who both started yesterday, Esteban Lepaul alongside Breel Mbolo. So you're kind of wondering, is Mete going to get much of a look in? He showed at the back end of last season what a talent he is, and he showed last night against Lyon that even if he's coming off the bench, he can still have a big impact. So yeah, great evening for him, and a sign that he's one to keep an eye on this season.
Andy, it's probably going to help him, isn't it? Breel Mbolo and Esteban Lepaul have come in, because looking back to last season and even the first few games this season, it was like they were expecting this 17-year-old kid to kind of lead the line and be the main man. He is really talented. And I know that you saw him score the winning goal, wasn't it, in the Gambardella in the Youth Cup final for Rennes, because you were at the Stade de France to see that. He's 17. Yeah. He's enormous, isn't he? And strong.
Yeah.
He's quite the talent.
Yeah, and of course, Rennes, a club with an incredible reputation of bringing through young players, and he looks to be the next one. I mean, I think I'm right in saying he was in the France Under-21 squad last week, and obviously he's very young even to be part of that. So you're right. I mean, having him as a guy who you're not expecting to play every game, but who can come in every now and again and make an impact is a good. I suspect that I wouldn't be surprised if in a year or two's time he's already on his way to Bayern Munich or something like that, because he looks like the real deal. As you say, he's a big lad, and he knows how to use that power and strength. And I mean, to make an impact like that in a game like that one last night, very, very impressive. He
could be the next Mathys Tel, you're saying, or maybe the next Dembele or Desiree Doué or Camavinga. They do have a great record. And Tom, just looking at that game, so I think your villain might be related as well. Lyon, they went into this with 3 straight wins, didn't they? And I saw bits of it. I've read about it, and by all accounts, it was really impressive from Lyon. Certainly for the first hour, they really dominated that first half. They took the lead through Corentin Tolisso, who was really impressive. But the game then hinged on one particular incident, didn't it?
Yes, and that takes us on very neatly to my villain of the week. I feel a bit harsh giving him the villain award, but yeah, Tyler Morton gets it because his dismissal changed the game. Lyon were 1-0 up, had been absolutely brilliant first half. Continuing the small miracle that their season has been so far. I mean, enormously turbulent summer. Thought they were going to be in Ligue 2, end up clinging on in Ligue 1, forced to sell so many players, make a decent start to the season, then have to sell Georges Mikotadze, their only real proven centre forward, right at the end of the window. You keep thinking that the train is going to come off the rails, and the first half at least suggested that perhaps it won't. Second half, Rennes kind of got on top of things. Habib Bey made a tweak in the second half, shifted to a 4-4-2. They started to put Lyon under a bit more pressure, and Lyon were managing to withstand that pressure right up until the moment that Tyler Morton decided to commit a really unnecessary foul. I mean, he was by the Rennes left-hand corner flag, had lost possession to Kader Mete, funnily enough, who was proceeding with the ball down the left wing, and Morton very cynically just tripped him up. No attempt to play the ball, tripped him up. Clearly thought, oh, well, I'll get a booking for that. Because in England, you probably would get a booking. But, monsieur, you are no longer in England. You are in Liga. And if you do anything to irritate the referees, you'll get sent off. And so he was. And that proved the turning point. Within 5 minutes, kind of equalised, and a few minutes beyond that, they've sealed a 3-1 win. And Morton has been brilliant since he came into Lyon. One of the signings of the season so far. I think he was nominated for Player of the Month in August in Ligue 1. I think the Lyon fans have already been completely won over by him. But yeah, that was one to forget. And I suspect he probably won't be committing any more avoidable, cynical fouls in the near future.
Yeah, it's part of the process, isn't it, of adapting to another league, and French referees are something that you need to adapt to. I'm gonna just, if you don't mind, I'm butting in a little bit here, but I'm gonna bring my villain to the piece, because my villain is a collective. It is French referees, and I mean, overall, I think they're okay, and I think it's more the rules maybe that need to be looked at, and the referees have been criticised for applying the letter of the law. But these red cards, there are just too many. I've noted a few stats. We've had 6 red cards this weekend alone in 9 matches, 16 in the season, 36 games. That's double the number we had this time last season. The numbers are going up. Andy, I know you were at the Velodrome. Lorient had a player sent off. A double peine, as they say in France, double punishment for the penalty that Yongwa conceded when he just put his arm around. He was turned by Murillo. Murillo was in the clear, and he put his arm around him. Penalty, and it was a straight red card because he wasn't playing the ball. But it totally changes the whole complexion of the night. That was early on, and I don't know. I just think, going back to Rennes, Lyon are furious because obviously they feel disappointed, maybe hard done by about Tyler Morton, but also Anthony Rouault in the first half went studs in on Kalis Mera and wasn't sent off. And maybe you can say, okay, he shouldn't be sent off. But the fact is, usually players in France do get sent off for that. So it's the consistency, isn't it? And I don't know what you thought, Andy, when, did your heart sink a little bit when Lorient went down to 10 men early on at the Velodrome? Because you were there, weren't you?
Yeah. I mean, my heart did sink. I mean, it ruins the game. Of course, it ruins the game. So from that point of view, it's a shame. But strictly speaking, by the rules, I'm not sure the referee had an alternative, because if the rules say that in that situation it's no longer a red card, given that you give a penalty, we don't give a red card unless the guy has stopped a clear goal scoring opportunity and he's not even tried to play the ball. So you send him off, you have no choice. I mean, the other game I covered this weekend was the Lille-Toulouse game yesterday, and that was a 2-1 win for Lille, which we'll come back to. Toulouse were winning 1-0, and then about 10 minutes from the end, they had the young midfielder Alexis Vossa red carded, and he was initially given a yellow for catching Benjamin Andre on the shin with his studs. It's an ugly tackle. But then the referee gets called across the VAR, and immediately, like one glance at the screen, decides to upgrade the yellow to a red. The thing about that is, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but the thing about it is that I'm not sure what Vossa can do. I'm not sure where else he can plant his leg. I mean, Andre comes into the tackle, and effectively, Vossa puts his boot down. His studs are underneath his boot, and he catch. I'm not sure how you can really give a red card. And then, of course, Lille go on to win the game. Toulouse were winning, but Lille, with the extra man, go on to win the game 2-1. So but what I find really amazing, Matt, is that I was looking in L'Équipe this morning, and there doesn't seem to be any outrage from Toulouse about this. I find that kind of strange as well.
For me, it's not a red card. It's a red card that you see in Ligue 1, but Vossa, there's no intent to hurt the guy. It's a little bit clumsy. I know it's not about intent. It's about the dangerous nature of the challenge. Tom?
I mean, I will preface this by saying no one finds French referees more annoying than me. I find them far too pernickety, far too determined to assert themselves unnecessarily. But I think actually this weekend they got most of the big calls right. And I think the Vossa sending off was unfortunate in multiple ways.
Like Boris Johnson.
Let's not bring Boris Johnson into this race. But I mean, young 17-year-old kid's just come on. He's obviously not trying to hurt the guy, but it was a bad challenge. He catches him with his studs high on the shin. I think even in the Premier League, that is a foul. I think the difference between Liga and the Premier League when it comes to referees, above all, is a cultural one. I've made this point before, when I've been on Canal Football Club. In England, the feeling is that the referee tries not to be seen. The referee does everything he can so that no one notices he's there. You let the game flow. You try really hard not to get your cards out. And what we've seen in the Premier League in the last couple of years under these new directives that Howard Webb has issued since he took charge of English referees is that there's a very high bar for VAR intervention. And in France, it's a very different approach. The referee walks out onto the pitch thinking, it is my job to referee this game. It is my job to apply the rules of the game correctly. And so I will do that. And so, you look at the amount of time that the VAR took to scrutinise the Rennes equaliser against Lyon last night without anyone in the stadium or anyone watching at home knowing what it was, exactly what they were looking at. And I think it comes back to that cultural imperative that says to the French referee, you are here to apply the rules of the game correctly, and it's kind of rules first and then we'll see what impact that has. Whereas I think in England, not to say England's better than France or whatever, but it's let's try not to impact the game at all unless we absolutely have to. But that said, generally speaking, I think most of the big calls in Ligue 1 this weekend were correct ones.
Andy?
Stunned silence.
I just, again, I come back to the Lille-Toulouse game and put the question out there to whether you've seen the penalty decision, the decision to give Lille a penalty for a handball. And from what I can see, the only angle that the referee made the decision to give the penalty for when he came to look at the VAR screen, to me, is not 100% conclusive that it strikes his hand. I mean, it probably does, but it's not absolutely conclusive. And I just think that VAR in general, of course, has gone, but this is a separate discussion, but, they've gone beyond what the point of VAR was, which was to only, if it's a clear and obvious error, and so often it's not the case, and games are being re-refereed. But I think, just to finish on this, the flip side to what you're saying is that actually some of the very best referees in the world are French. Francois Letixier refereed the Euro 2024 final. I think he is a very, very good referee, and there are other ones too. So I don't think it's all about French referees personally, but clearly in Ligue 1, the way in which they're perhaps being encouraged to apply the rules is a little bit problematic.
What I would say is, as long as they don't introduce the ref cam in France, because I watched Arsenal's game against Nottingham Forest, and some of the footage they switched to this ref cam, and it's just like, it makes you feel ill. You're moving all over the place. It's all blurred. It brings absolutely nothing. But Andy, your heroes and villains, and I do think you have something, one of these innovation. Maybe it's not an innovation, but something about the television coverage that is annoying you. But there have been innovations in France. But what's your bugbear?
So my bugbear is something that obviously you in particular, Matt, will be very familiar with, which is the interview with the players as they come off the field at halftime and full time, which seems to be a thing that you and I have commentated French football for many years, and we obviously, as a result of that, often have to translate these interviews, live on air, because they're usually done in French or perhaps another language. And the thing is that you say it's an innovation. I think it's been tried in some other leagues. I think they do it in La Liga on their world international coverage. The French league has stuck with this for years and years and years, despite often changing it's changing whoever's the international broadcaster, whatever often changes. They always stick by this. They talk about innovations, bringing things in, improving the coverage. They always stick by this thing of interviewing a player as they come off the field at halftime and again at full time. And I would say about 95% of the time, the players say nothing. They say nothing that adds anything to anything. And very, 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 very occasionally, you will get a player who says something that's reasonably interesting. Actually, I come back again to the Lille game I did yesterday. Rasmus Nikolaisen, the captain of Toulouse, the one who was penalised for the handball, he spoke at the end of the game and gave a reasonably good interview. He said it was irritating, the decision and all that, but he didn't seem to deny that it was a penalty, and there was a bit of insight there. But usually there is no insight. The players are asked a couple of questions. At halftime, the question will always be, what do you think you need to do to change things? Or You know,
And they always say I need to get into the dressing room to listen to the coach.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I go?
And I think these interviews add nothing. What I find really incredible, is that nobody in a position of power in terms of covering French football and other leagues, if they do this, sits there and seems to think, nah, this doesn't add anything, or we need to do this differently.
Yeah. So I was at PSG Lens, and at halftime, Ilya Zabani, the PSG defender from Ukraine, was called over for his halftime interview, and the interviewer had obviously prepared his question in English, gave it, and Zabani gave a sort of 3-word answer in English, and we was like waiting for the next question. But I think the interviewer was so taken aback, he was just like, "Thank you." So it was literally a sort of 10-second interview.
But it's also a thankless task for the interviewer, because what is the interviewer supposed to ask in that situation? You know, it's like, what is he really supposed to ask? I think the whole exercise is utterly futile, and I think it would take nothing away. The problem in France is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my take on this is that the reason this happens is because Laurent Paganelli, a very well-known ex-player, and who Tom obviously knows personally. I do not know the guy personally, but everybody knows Laurent Paganelli, who follows French football, the very kind of bubbly, I would suggest, quite irritating character on the touchline, who interviews the players and has a bit of a rapport with the players. They all seem to love him, and it seems to be accepted. Oh, this is a great thing. You know, he can talk to the players, and he's on. First of all, I've never found those interviews remotely entertaining and adding anything. And second of all, just because he does them doesn't mean that they should be so widespread. I think the whole thing, Rasmus Nikolaisen used the word irritating for the penalty decision given against him yesterday. I would use the word irritating to describe the whole exercise.
Andy, well, okay, you've had your rant, you've had your Monday morning moan. And I'd agree with some of it. I was talking about innovations. One thing they've brought in is something even more futile. The Ligue Plus channel, the channel that the league they do an interview now at the end of the warm up when the players walking off after the warm up, sort of like, so how you feeling? If you had a good pre-match meal. But anyway, we're not going to go on and on. But I think the halftime interview is better than the warm up interview. Andy. Get us on a positive track again. Your hero from the weekend.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give it to Ethan Mbappé because, again, another young player, just because he scored his first professional goal. And it was a 98th minute winner for Lille in that game against Toulouse. It was a really good finish. He'd come off the bench, first appearance of the season. He's still only 18. He is obviously Kylian Mbappe's little brother, who left Paris Saint-Germain a year ago at the same time as Kylian left. I believe I don't know if this has ever been officially verified, but the suggestion was that he left because of as part of the fallout between PSG and Kylian, that they weren't going to keep him. I'm not sure they were ever really going to keep him anyway. But he obviously left PSG after a few appearances, went to Lille, tried to get a break there, had a bit of an injury hit first season. Hoping that things will be better this season, gets his first professional goal in a big moment to win the game for his team. And I just hope that kind of sets his career up and running. And as I was saying on the commentary yesterday, if he can go on to have half the career that Kylian is having, then he'll be that could be considered a big success. So all the best to him.
But that's it, isn't it? When you're a younger brother and your big brother's a superstar, you're always going to have, the journalist like Andy Scott at the end say, if he could have half the career as older, the comparison is always going to be there, and it's not easy. I kind of know how he feels. My big brother, he's a doctor, and like when we were younger, he had loads of girlfriends, and I may be. Very popular
I can
guy.
only have half the number of girlfriends as my brother.
Yeah,
then
exactly.
I'll
and
done well.
John, if you're listening, fair play to you. You're a good lad. You've done well. We're gonna move on though very quickly. My hero. I'm going a little bit further left field. Obed.
Is it your brother?
It's not my brother. It's Obed Encabadio, a goalkeeper I'm not that familiar with, but had a terrific game for Paris FC when they won away to Brest. Really good result for Paris FC, and Encambadio made some terrific saves. And it's interesting. He seems to be number one. They have bought Kevin Trapp, former PSG goalkeeper, Germany international. Trapp played the previous game because Encambadio was injured. But it's nice to see this young keeper, 22 years of age. He's played for France under 21s. He's come through the academy at Paris FC, and we haven't talked much about them. We will talk about Paris FC at some point on the pod, but a shout out to their goalkeeper, who's done extremely well. Now, that first part has been very long, guys. It's eating into the rest of the pod, but, there is a lot to talk about. We want to talk about Marseille, who have got a huge week coming up. They play Real Madrid on Tuesday, Paris Saint-Germain on Sunday. Andy Scott was at the Velodrome to see them play Lorient. They won 4-0. It's been, as always, a crazy couple of weeks for Marseille. Rabiot left, Jonathan Rowe left. They brought in a spate of players in the last sort of 48 hours of the window. We saw Naïf Aguerd make his debut. We saw Benjamin Pavard make his debut. They both started at the back, both scored goals, kept clean sheets, an ideal debut. And the feel-good factor, Andy, after a disastrous few weeks, is back.
Is it? Is it at Marseille? Is there a feel-good factor? There's just always like some tension in the air. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously they needed that result because they have a huge week. I mean, Real Madrid away to begin your Champions League campaign is glamorous, it's exciting, but it's also very difficult. Paris Saint-Germain at home on Sunday, very difficult, although might come back to it, might not be a bad time to play PSG. I think obviously the Marseille story is fascinating. It's like Pablo Longoria, the president, along with Mehdi Benatia, his sporting director, have decided that the only way to make this work is to make things as sort of crazy as possible, keep everybody on edge all the time, make as many changes as possible all the time, never let things be calm. And, before the season, they were kind of saying, right, we're just going to make a few tweaks to the squad. We've got something to build on. Fast forward to Friday night, and there were 7 players who made their Marseille competitive debuts in that match. One of them was Facundo Medina, who was one of their first summer signings, but who'd missed the first 3 games either because of suspension or injury. The other ones are all brand new arrivals. Igor Paixão, is the other one who'd been injured. But, you've got Pavard, Aguerd, Emerson Palmieri. I was commentating the game and I've already forgotten who some of the other new signings were. I'm not sure how Roberto De Zerbi is supposed to assimilate all that in such a short space of time. He is playing a dangerously high line, which wasn't punished on Friday because Lorient, because of the circumstances of the game, having the man sent off early on, and also just there's a gulf between the teams. But I am going to be really interested to see how on earth they are going to adapt to playing against Real Madrid with your Mbappés, Vinicius's, etc. Far less PSG at the weekend. They have great potential in so many areas, but it's potential that could also go very badly wrong, as always with Marseille. And of course, to add into the mix, Longoria and Benatia, the way that they are managing things behind the scenes, De Zerbi is just such a how can I describe him? Like, just such a frenetic kind of, he's so fiery, and he's like that on the touchline all the time. And I'm not sure that, it's good to have this energy, but sometimes I feel like maybe Marseille, maybe you need to channel that energy, maybe you need to calm things down just a little bit. I mean, you guys know that Marseille is such a kind of, it's that Latin temperament, it's got kind of that vibe to it. But I don't know. I'm just not convinced how. I've got no idea how this season is going to go. That's exciting, but it must also be quite annoying for the supporters sometimes that things can't just be a little bit more clear cut, a little bit calmer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and Tom, you probably can't read that much into it, given that Lorient were down to 10 men. Lorient conceded 7 goals the previous weekend or 2 weeks ago against Lille. Just what Andy was saying. So very high line. Also, De Zerbi switching to a back 3. Playing Balerdi with Pavard and Aguerd. Sorry, not Balerdi. Medina with Pavard and Aguerd. So he left Balerdi out. It's going to be interesting to see if he comes in on Tuesday, given that he is the captain. They're obviously going to have to play a lot deeper against Mbappé and the like at the Bernabeu. Can they do something against Real Madrid, or is it just so many changes? It's a team that hasn't yet sort of found its feet. What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, as Andy was saying, it's just perpetual motion at Marseille. And, I wrote about them a bit towards the end of last season, and they are beginning year 2 of what is supposed to be a 3-year project. And year 1 was new coach, new players, lots of turnover. And year 2 was supposed to be about kind of, bringing a bit more stability to proceedings. The coach has stayed. It's pretty rare in recent years for a Marseille coach to be going into a second season. And what we were hearing was that they weren't going to make that many changes to the squad. And yet here we are with a completely different set of players to the one that secured Champions League qualification last year. I mean, De Zerbi will absolutely relish the thought of going up against a team like Real Madrid. In a way, it's the worst possible first fixture you could have. I mean, there aren't many more terrifying prospects in European football than going up against Real Madrid in front of their own fans. But at the same time, we're early in the season. Madrid's league form has been excellent. Kylian Mbappé has made a fantastic start to the season, but, they won't be firing on all cylinders just yet. But I'm really interested as to how Marseille are going to go about this game. Are they going to, let Madrid have the ball and kind of sit deep? Or are they going to stay true to their De Zerbi principles and play with a high line and try and take control of the ball? I think it'd be really interesting. And it starts their Champions League campaign off perfectly. They've got some great fixtures to come as well. You look at some of the home games in particular. They've got Ajax, Atalanta, Newcastle, Liverpool. Their fans will have been rubbing their hands together ever since the draw was made. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think Marseille at the Velodrome is going to be amazing to see this season in the Champions League. Just very quickly, guys, where do you expect them to get to in this season's Champions League? You mentioned those opponents. I'll add in Sporting, Union, Saint-Gilloise and Bruges. So games, that they can absolutely get points from. Andy's kind of making a face to suggest he's not confident. Wait, yeah, very quickly, Andy.
Well, I mean, last season you needed 11...
Semi-finals, quarterfinals.
No, I think last season you needed 11 points to get to the next stage. So that's like 3 wins and 2 draws. I think they're going to be struggling to get that. I obviously, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to need that many points this year, but I think they'll struggle to get in the top 24. But I think they might.
It's a bit
vague.
Okay. It's no. It's a bit pessimistic, but it's your view.
Pablo Longoria said, after the draw was made, he said he was asked what the objective was, and he just kind of said, well, we want to do well, but the main aim is to make sure we're in the Champions League again next season. So.
Yeah, Marseille famously got 0 points, didn't they, once in a group stage? They're not going to do that, surely. Tom, give us a bit of hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think they will be one of those clubs who are sort of, in the mix for the playoff round. I can see them, going into their last game needing a point or needing 3 points or something. I think they're capable of doing it, quality-wise. But yeah, I'd be surprised if they do a Lille and cruise their way straight into the last 16. I think they'll be kind of scrapping for a place in the playoff round. But I don't think it's beyond them.
Yeah, okay. Tough games. I think they can get into the playoffs. I don't think they'll finish top 8, but I think they can get into the playoffs. And, in knockout matches, one game at the Velodrome, Marseille have produced so many special nights in Europe. Who knows? I'm going to say last 16 for Marseille this season. That's it for part 1. We've got still lots to talk about, though, on the pod. We're going to be talking Strasbourg and their partnership with Blueco. We're going to be talking Monaco and PSG as well. So don't go away. Welcome back to Across the Channel. I am joined today by Tom Williams and Andy Scott, and we're going to be looking at France's other 2 Champions League participants. Before we do that, though, we had a very interesting afternoon yesterday in Strasbourg, where Liam Rossigne's side managed to get another really late victory, thanks to a late penalty. But all of the talk has been about the protests from a section, according to Rossigne, a very, very small section, but basically a section of Strasbourg ultras who prepared a big banner telling Emanuel Emegha that he should no longer be captain of the club, accusing him of being a pawn in the Blueco empire. Just to give a little bit of background, Blueco, who own Chelsea, also bought Strasbourg last year. We've seen multiple comings and goings between Chelsea and Strasbourg in terms of players. The Strasbourg fans, a lot of them are unhappy with Strasbourg effectively becoming a feeder club, if you like, for Chelsea. On the other side of the coin, they're very happy to have players like André Santos, who was brilliant last season, the Brazilian who has since moved to Chelsea. Now, this week, we had the announcement that Emanuel Emegha was or is going to be joining Chelsea at the end of the season. Now, he's a very good, strong, mobile attacker who did really well last season, helping Strasbourg get into Europe. He's been given the captain's armband this season by Liam Rossigne. He was out, I think, injured yesterday for the game. He was present at the Stade de la Meno. And he obviously saw the banners. He saw the unrest. One of the Strasbourg supporters groups has also called for Mark Keller, the historical figure at the club, to leave, basically accusing him of being just a puppet for Bluco and just being there to kind of present this local front, if you like, for Strasbourg. But they're saying it's nothing more than a pretense. So there's a lot to unpack here, Tom. But if we focus on the Emegha situation, can you understand the fans being unhappy, basically saying you've changed your shirt because he was photographed wearing a Chelsea shirt? We're early in the season. I have to admit, I find the whole transfer a little bit odd insofar as doing the deal now. We don't know how Chelsea's season is going to go, who's going to score goals for them, whether they're going to buy another striker. But do you understand Strasbourg's point of view, or the minority of Strasbourg fans who are protesting?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's happening at Strasbourg is one of the most interesting plot lines in world football at the moment. They're a real test case for multi-club ownership because, ever since the Bluco takeover, we've been worried that they were going to become a feeder club. Their fans were obviously worried that was going to be the case. But I think in the wider football world, and particularly those of us who follow French football and who love French football, you don't want to see a historic club like Strasbourg becoming a simple feeder club. They have become a feeder club, perhaps inevitably, but it's worked really well for them. I mean, they're at a time of acute financial crisis in French football. Strasbourg are able to spend money as if they were a Champions League team. You look at some of the other historic clubs in French football, Le Havre, clubs of that sort of level who have barely been able to spend any money at all over the last couple of years. So this link up with Chelsea has done what it was supposed to do. It has enabled Strasbourg to remain competitive, to qualify for Europe again, to play good football, to attract good players to the club. But there has been this underlying drumbeat of dissatisfaction from the supporters. We shouldn't forget that throughout last season, the main Strasbourg Ultras group were on strike for the first 15 minutes of every home game. And this at a time when Strasbourg spent the most part of the second part of last season in the Champions League places, having this historically successful season, and yet the fans refuse to accept this model. And that Emegha has agreed to join Chelsea is, perhaps the kind of thing we should have seen coming. This is the kind of thing that, that is going to happen more and more, that has already happened. I think it's more in the way that it was presented. Like you say, Matt, why announce it now? Why does he have to pose with a Chelsea shirt outside the Chelsea training centre? Having just taken on the Strasbourg captaincy, wait until the end of the season. Do it then. I don't see what anyone gains by announcing it now. And I think, the position that the Strasbourg Ultras have taken has created real tension, in the stands at Le Minau, because the majority of fans are happy with the situation. Felt a sense of distaste about Bluco coming in, but have also seen the benefits of it on the pitch. But I kind of applaud the fact that the Strasbourg Ultras are still taking this stand, are still trying to fight for, the kind of the community role that a football club should have. It's the kind of thing, it's the sort of situation you can't really take your eyes off, because it is just so interesting, and there are so many different strands to it.
It's hard to disagree with anything that Tom is saying. I think that, I mean, the Strasbourg case is, as Tom says, one of the most interesting in world football right now. I mean, multi-club ownership as a subject is, in my opinion, probably the most significant thing happening in football now. I think in a way, the thing about it is that just about every club is a feeder club, essentially. But I suppose if I take the thing about it is, if I take my team in Scotland, for example, Dundee United, we are never going to win the Champions League. Nowadays, it's just impossible. Once upon a time, 40, 50 years ago, we could have actually aspired to that, but now it's impossible. But the thing is, you can still, in football, you can still theoretically aspire to achieve anything. But once you are effectively bought by an English Premier League giant, then it makes it absolutely, it's explicit. It's like you you cannot be more important than us. It's under no circumstances can you overtake us in the hierarchy. The thing about Chelsea is, of course, that they have had a couple of years recently where they've not qualified for the Champions League, but that's probably going to become, that's quite rare. I mean, they're back in the Champions League this year. I expect that should continue to be the case in the coming seasons. They're signing all these young players, and Emegha, who's, okay, he's not that young. He's a little bit older than some of the guys they've signed, but he's effectively an up-and-coming striker. They've done this in the recent past. You look at Estevão, for example, Estevão Willian, the young Brazilian winger. Well, they agreed to sign him 2 years ago from Palmeiras, and then he came in the summer. They're doing this all over the place, and Emegha is just the next one. So Chelsea are at the top of the tree. Strasbourg are not going to overtake them. So in a way, I mean, absolutely, Strasbourg are now more competitive than they have been at any point, certainly in 2 decades, arguably the most competitive they've been since they won the league for the one time in their history in the late 1970s. And they're spending all this money. They're in Europe. You know, they've got every chance, I think, of competing for Champions League qualification this season. But then what happens if they qualify for the Champions League? Because Chelsea will probably be in the Champions League. So that obviously comes into the fans' thinking. And I think, as Tom says more broadly, yeah, it's just about this club being bought by an American, venture capitalists whose interest is not really to make Strasbourg a great team and it's not about the community in Strasbourg. So that is where the tension comes. But at the same time, as Tom says, they have a good team, a good coach, good players. They're exciting to watch. So it's quite a difficult equation, really, for all of us, both those on the inside and people on the inside and people like us watching on.
Tom, just to ask you about Liam Rossigna, because he's been so good, like so impressive. Honestly, I didn't expect him to be as successful as he has been, because he's got good young players, but tactically he's been superb. In terms of his communication, he's been superb. He's taking a risk, I think, like in the way he's come out. He's come out with really, really strong words after the game against those supporters. And the question I'm going to put to you is, could this, I hope it's not, but could this be the beginning of the end? Because if there is a real rupture between sort of Rossigna and the fans, just a couple of the comments here, he says, I'm absolutely devastated. These fans, who he says were a minority, are not respecting my players. I invite them to come to my home. If they want, I'll give them my address. We can sit down and chat. I understand their opinions on multi-club ownership, but we're playing in Europe soon, so respect us and respect the football club. I mean, it's strong stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, but I guess, he is at least opening the door to dialogue. He's saying, let's talk about it. He's not just kind of pointing the finger and having a go. And as ever in football, it will come down to results. If Strasbourg have another successful season, as they did last season, if they're back in Europe again, then all will probably be forgiven on both sides. And I think what helps for Rossigna is the fact that the majority of Strasbourg fans are behind him. This is a minority, a very vocal, very visible minority. But, those ultras, they do not speak for all the Strasbourg fans. And we saw that during games last season, that, you had the very peculiar spectacle of fans kind of booing each other. Strasbourg fans who aren't part of this ultras group booing the ultras for not getting behind the team more. Which is, a pretty incredible state of affairs. So I don't think he's taking too much of a risk. I think it's a calculated risk. He's in a position of strength at the moment because things have gone so well. I think the only danger to him is if results start to slide and the atmosphere, becomes more complicated.
Yeah, it is absolutely fascinating, as you both said, and there is going to be an Across the Channel special on Strasbourg soon. I haven't set a date for it, but it is so interesting. I think we need to do a deep dive on that. We're going to move our attentions now to the other 2 teams competing in the Champions League this week. Monaco are travelling to Club Brugge on Thursday. They secured a win away to Auxerre. I was in Auxerre, and it's a flattering scoreline really for Monaco. They found it really tough to create chances against Auxerre. Auxerre had big chances on the counter attack. Sinayoko and Casemir missed one-on-ones. Auxerre reduced to 10 men with, I think, 20-odd minutes to go. Still managed to come back and equalise at 1-1 with 10 men. But George Elenikeana scored a really good header to get the points for Monaco. I'm a little bit worried about this Monaco side because I do think they've got one of the best squads in Ligue 1, and I do think they should be a more balanced and better team than they are. But Andy, it's an important win. Obviously, they've got those 3 points. It's difficult after the international break, particularly for a team like Monaco, who, they've got players. I think Balogun was playing against Minamino like 4 days earlier in the United States or something. But what do you think? How they've got 9 points, 3 wins out of 4. It's not been a bad start to the season. But on the eve of their Champions League campaign, what do you think of their chances?
Well, I mean, obviously, I suppose Monaco's aim this season would be to kind of do better than last season. So, push PSG a bit closer in the league and obviously finish in the top 3 and maybe get to the last 16 in the Champions League. I think, like so many French clubs, they had to... I mean, it might be quite surprising to a lot of people because Monaco usually kind of spend money without having to seemingly worry too much about bringing money in. But they were a bit reluctant to spend money in the summer, and they were clearly keen to make a couple of big sales. Elias Ben Seguir moving on, Wilfried Singo, who I thought was a pretty good player for them, but they were happy to take money for him. On the flip side of that, they kept Akliouche. They've got a lot of good young players. There was a moment where they thought they might lose Denis Zakaria, but they kept him. So the team is arguably certainly no weaker than last season. I mean, they needed to bring in a new goalkeeper. Remains to be seen if Lukas Hradecky is going to be really an upgrade. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, it's quite frustrating because you feel like Monaco, they have really exciting players. There is that potential, but they've always kind of got a lot of young players. There's always a bit of inconsistency, and this has been the case with them really ever since they won the league in 2017. They've never, kick on from that. I mean, that was kind of a one-off, that team. And it got broken up, but they've never really managed to... Well, they've not won anything since then, not won anything at all. So I think they'll be capable of getting a couple of results in the Champions League. They have like Manchester City at home. I wouldn't be surprised if they get a result against Manchester City at home. But, I think you're looking at probably at best for them in the Champions League, probably qualifying for the playoff round again, and then it's kind of the luck of the draw. They were a bit unlucky with the draw last season in the playoffs because they got Benfica. So we'll see. I mean, I think the last 16 is not beyond them in Europe. And I think the top 3 is where they should be in Ligue 1.
Yeah, I mean, as Andy says, I think Monaco's issue last season was that they were a very young squad. And you saw that particularly in the Champions League, lots of avoidable mistakes and costly mistakes. Particularly you go back to the game against Benfica that eventually knocked them out. And as a consequence, they put a real emphasis on bringing in experienced players in the transfer window, which is not something that Monaco have really looked to do in recent years. So Paul Pogba, the headline signing, Eric Dyer as well. I think Dyer's made a really big impact. At the same time, they're still without a clean sheet in Ligue 1 this season, so they're letting in too many goals. Pogba hasn't yet pulled on a Monaco shirt for a game. We're not expecting to see him until probably next month. So for the time being, we've still got a similarly callow group of players out on the pitch, and so far in Ligue 1, it's been pretty encouraging. As you said, Matt, only that one defeat away at Lille on the second weekend. They're managing to grind out results. 3-2 at home to Strasbourg, 2-1 away at Auxerre yesterday. And yeah, I mean, the fact that they've held on to Maguire Zakliouche is great because he's great to watch, brilliant player. That strike force of Biereth and Balogun, feels like it's starting to really take shape. But I struggle to see them making a bigger impact in the Champions League than they did last season. Yeah,
fair enough. They do have a big squad now. I thought it was interesting on Saturday they changed their whole back 4. And I think Eric Dyer will come back in along with Mawissa at centre half for the Champions League game. They've got Vanderson, Orteze at right back, Watura and Caio Henrique at left back. I managed to have a quick chat with Eric Dyer after the game, and I said to him, it was interesting. I said to him, "Oh, there are tough, away games, aren't they, in Ligue 1? These nights here or whatever." And he sort of said, "Yeah, it seems to be." Like he's obviously discovering, getting to know this league. And I kind of felt like he was pretty surprised by what he saw and probably a bit worried, about the Monaco performance, the way they were so unbalanced in that game. But it is difficult that, like, against these teams like Auxerre, it was raining the whole evening, blustery wind. It's a little stadium that's compact. They've got passionate supporters. And Auxerre, I think they've only got 3 points so far, but they're going to get points this season. I mean, they've got pacey players. A guy called Namasso. Do you guys know Danny Namasso? He's a Cameroon international. Amazing story. Born in Reading, started his career at Reading, moved to Porto, and he's now on loan from Porto. He was playing in the Club World Cup. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but you find these players who are like very strong, very pacey. Like Sinayoko's an excellent player. Seko Mara made a decent debut. So all of that to say that I do think it was a bit of an eye opener for Eric Dyer, and Monaco, I think, will benefit from Dyer, because it's games like that you need to roll your sleeves up and just make sure you're solid at the back and get the odd goal. But we'll see. Monaco playing away to Club Bruges. Bruges are a strong side. I don't think that's an easy one. So we'll see how they get on in Belgium. We're going to finish our Champions League chat by talking about Paris Saint-Germain. Andy, it was 4 wins from 4 now. It was a pretty solid victory against Lens. It was a funny game, as these games often are at the Parc des Princes. PSG had so much of the football. They didn't really create many chances, and actually Lens had a couple of good chances. Thauvin played well. Odsonne Edouard had a couple of opportunities on his debut. But the quality just made the difference. The 2 goals Bradley Barcola scored were phenomenal. I mean, the first goal, he just makes it look easy. It's like Thierry Henry in his pomp. He's 20 yards out, opens up his body, top corner. And, it was interesting because Lens were playing well before that goal, and it just completely sapped everything out of them. They were like, oh, even if we play well, they're gonna do this. So, PSG, Andy, below full strength without Dembele and Doué, but still too good for most of Ligue 1.
Yeah, too good. Well, let's see what happens next weekend when they play in Marseille. But obviously, the early, if you're going to draw a conclusion from the first month of the season, they're too good for all of Ligue 1 once again. I mean, they have such a margin over all the teams that they effectively accepted that the first month of the season was going to be their pre-season. I think that the PSG story is going to be really interesting this season. I mean, it always is, of course. They won the Champions League last season, and that was incredible. But obviously, coming off the back of that season, 65 games, 11 months, how they handle it and just how things work out for them is going to be really interesting, because they didn't get major injuries last season. All the talk in the last couple of weeks has been about those injuries for Dembele and Désiré Doué. And just, will they, Kvaratskhelia picked up a knock yesterday. Will they get lucky?
Three players went off injured yesterday.
Yeah. And
Braldo looked like it might be quite serious.
Mm-hmm.
Kvara, I think, he got a kick. He's got a big sort of gash on his calf. I think he should be okay. Kang In Lee going off injured with an ankle problem. That highlights your point.
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things about football now is that, okay, like, there's more games, and that takes a toll on the top clubs and theoretically exposes them. But of course, the response to that, I think we see this in England now, is that you just buy more players. You have a bigger squad. Look at Chelsea. You have a bigger squad. I mean, at the Club World Cup, Chelsea used 27 players. At the Club World Cup in 7 games, they used 27 players. It's been known now in the calendar year that you've basically been able to name PSG's starting lineup, and the only variations on that might be Barcola or Zaire Emery coming in. It's a really kind of tight group of players, but now we're seeing injuries, which we weren't seeing in the second half of last season. They're getting away with it in Ligue 1. I think they'll continue to get away with it in Ligue 1, and I think they'll almost certainly win the league. Otherwise, in the Champions League, let's see what happens. And just going forward, what this season could be a big drop-off. It's whether or not they're willing to accept that on the basis of how amazing last season was. But I think you have a real potential issue there, because they didn't add depth to the squad in the summer. They brought in 2 players that are replacement. Lucas Chevalier replaces Donnarumma in goal. They signed Ilya Zabarny, so they have an extra option in central defence, which they needed. But in midfield and attack, they didn't add players. For understandable reasons, perhaps, but they could have done with adding some depth. We're seeing that now. And, Ousmane Dembele, think how fragile he used to be when he was at Barcelona, when, he had all these muscle injuries and stuff. Let's hope that this one that he's got now is not going to be the first of several over the course of the season. I just think that if these injuries keep piling up, it's going to be really tough for them. The flip side is in the Champions League, they'll probably be fine. They might struggle a bit like they did last season in the league phase, but they went on to win it. So if they can get through these early weeks of the season, not accumulate too many injuries, maybe they'll be okay. But I just think that what I'm fearing for them now is that this is not going to be the same as last season. It's just that's potentially going to go down as a one-off.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question mark over PSG this season. We saw what they were capable of doing last season. I think the way that Luis Enrique managed the squad in terms of playing time was absolutely exceptional. And a consequence of that was that once we got to the knockout phase of the Champions League, he was able to put out basically the same starting 11 every week. Rest players for league games and cup games. And it meant that PSG were able to play their style of all-action football right up until the end of the campaign. They ran out of steam at the Club World Cup. We saw that, super impressive right up until the final. And then Chelsea played very well, and I think tactically was spot on, but they caught PSG on a bad day, and it looked like PSG's legs had sort of finally given up on them. And for the first time, Luis Enrique is suddenly confronted by an injury glut. He's not going to be able to rotate in the way that he was able to last season. And he's going to go into this Champions League campaign missing a lot of key players, and with big domestic fixtures as well, sandwiched between those games against Atalanta and Barcelona, you've got the Marseille game. So, I think when everyone is fit and firing, we know what PSG are capable of, but are they going to be able to get their best team out as frequently as they were last season? I think that's the big issue for them.
Yeah, and Luis Enrique has it's broken collarbone, isn't it, to contend with after
even the
a
manager's
cycling
dropped.
accident. It feels quite symbolic, doesn't it? We'll see. It's going to be a fascinating week in Europe for France's clubs, and of course Marseille, PSG next Sunday night. We're just going to wrap up now by asking Tom and Andy, either of you, have you got the Spanish striker for Marseille the last time they played Real Madrid?
Fernando Morientes.
Ah, Andy, well done.
So obviously I had that as well. I thought I'd let Andy answer.
It was Morientes started up alongside Lyon. We remember him more for his time at Monaco and indeed at Real Madrid, but he did play for Marseille. What was the score in the Bernabeu?
Can't remember.
Have a guess.
3-1 Madrid?
3-1.
It was 3-1 at the Velodrome to Real Madrid. It was 3-0 in the Bernabeu. 2 goals for who?
Cristiano Ronaldo.
A good guess, well done. And another for a Brazilian who was quite useful as well.
Kaká.
Yes, well done, guys, well done.
Not bad.
I'm impressed,
Not
Andy.
bad.
But you did used to live in Spain. You were probably
He's probably there.
Following Real Madrid at the time. Probably there.
I was,
Guys,
I was at the Real Madrid-Lyon game, which I think was the same season, right, when Lyon put them out at the Bernabeu, 2010.
Oh, yeah. Pjanic?
Miralem Pjanic.
It was Miralem Pjanic, yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. We could talk for ages. We'll probably finish the pod and then carry on talking about our trips to the Bernabeu and stuff like that, because we've got nothing else to do with our Mondays. Thank you so much, Tom Williams and Andy Scott, for joining us on the latest edition of Across the Channel. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope you'll do us the honour of coming back sometime soon as well.
Maybe.
Avec plaisir.
They're not committing? Oh, they are committing. Okay, avec plaisir. Merci, Tom. Thank you, Andy. Thank you to all of the listeners. We'll be back again next Monday. All the best. Bye-bye.